And so I don't think we have anybody online, is that right? There's no one on the call yet?
There's 3 people
Oh,
online.
there are, okay. Do we have Bruce or do we have
Sorry, who were you looking for?
Bruce Hogg?
No Bruce, we have Chris, Jim, and Kendra.
Okay, great. We still have a quorum, there's 4 of us here at 5, so we're good to do it. So the first item is public comment. Is there any public comment? No public comment. Okay, the second item, don't move too quickly here, is the minutes from the last meeting. Does anybody have any comments or issues on the minutes from the last meeting? Everybody see the minutes? You guys all okay to vote on the minutes? Okay. So with no comments on the minutes, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Oh, there's Bruce, okay. So the minutes passed 4-0-0, and that piece of housekeeping is taken care of. Okay, so I think that one of the people we have on is Chris Skelly. And there's Bruce. Hi, Bruce. So we're on item number, just about ready to start 3. Bruce, we moved quickly through public comment and the vote on the minutes. So we asked Chris Skelly, who sent us I guess you call it a brochure with his services that he offers as a historic preservationist. And some people on the committee were interested in what Chris had to say, particularly in the area of training. And we have an interest also in public awareness program that we're looking to start. So those are the 2 kinds of things that the commission was most interested in hearing about, Chris, but we would be happy to hear from you and other things that you think might be useful to us. I will say that I had a conversation with Ron Peterson, who's the former chair of the commission, who spoke very highly of Chris. So I hadn't heard Chris's name before, so that was good to hear. So Chris, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that introduction. Good to be here. So I have quite a long background in working with local historical commissions around the state. So I've worked with Ron, worked with the Orleans Historical Commission in the past. I was at the Massachusetts Historical Commission for about 23 years, and I was the director of local government programs there. So I got to work with every local historical commission across the state, big and small, from Boston, Worcester, Springfield, and down to every little small town across the state. So I got a good sense of how local historical commissions work and how they can be most effective in their planning processes and things like that. I left the Massachusetts Historical Commission in 2021, and I've been doing consulting work since then, just because I still really like working with local historical commissions. It's sort of still in my interest quite a bit, even after all these years. So I started consulting practice in 2021, and now provide direct assistance to local historical commissions in Massachusetts, but I do a lot of work outside the state as well at this point. So I do a number of things in terms of assisting local commissions. So as you heard, one of the things I provide is some training. So I have a long list of training topics that might be useful for local historical commissions. Sometimes I do those virtually, sometimes I do them with several commissions all at the same time. And sometimes there's been a couple of commissions recently that I've done on-site training as well. So I've gone right there. Just certainly my favorite way to do the training is just to be on-site and meeting with you, talking with you directly. So those are trainings on all kinds of things like the role of local historical commissions, demolition delay, local historic districts, Secretary of the Tier standards, preparing a historic preservation plan. I have a pretty long list of topics that I can cover for a training session. So that might be one thing that you could take a look at that list and see what training topics might be good for you. There's definitely one that's on outreach and just sort of community building community support, things like that.
And how much do you charge for those? If we wanted to do an on-site one, let's start there, I guess.
Yep, I keep those pretty low in price, so it's $350, and I don't worry about at this point, as long as it's within the state. If it's out of state, it gets more complicated, but in state, it's $350, and I don't charge extra for the travel time. I live in the western part of the state right now. Cape Cod actually works well for me. My father lives in Chatham. I was a resident of Orleans at one point in the past.
And how
And
many,
then
how
my
many
parents-
people would be in a session like that?
How many people, let's see, I've been doing ones for just the historical commission at the time, so at one time, so, gonna be, sometimes it's only 5 people. I'm working with one commission right now that's interested in having a larger group. They want to invite all the neighboring towns to a session, and I'm like, yeah, the price doesn't go up if there's more people there. It's actually more enjoyable for me if there's more people there. The interaction, discussion tends to be more interesting. So it's not like the cost goes up or anything if there's more people there. So I'm fine if you were interested in inviting other people at the same, other commissions, neighboring commissions to the same training session. That works for me. Sometimes commissions will also want to see if the planning board wants to come or if local elected officials come. I have had select board members there or city council members come to trainings as well. It's great when they do, so they can really get a sense of what your role is, and it's great to see that kind of interest through the other boards as well.
Chris, it's Thaddeus here.
Yes.
I know you're familiar with the challenges and the opportunities in Orleans, but it just, without getting into a deep dive, what would you say are the services or the value that you could best provide for a commission like ours?
All right, I mean, I have an understanding of the basic challenges that you would face as the Orleans Historical Commission, but maybe not necessarily the detail that I would need. So if you were a brand new commission, for instance, I would often say you really need the introduction to what local historical commissions do, just so you can see a broad view of how all the different players function, all your different roles, how things work in local government and state government and throughout. That's a great training to get started for new local historical commission members. If you're a commission that you already have demolition delay, I think. So if we did demolition delay, I'd be talking a little bit more about how your demolition delay bylaw is functioning, or is there some other ways through a training session that we could talk about how your demolition delay could work a little bit better. That's on my mind just because I got one of those coming up next month, where they have demolition delay already and they're just they're feeling a little worn out from how their demolition delay is working. So they'd like me to come in and just talk to them about role of demolition delay and what other kinds of options they can consider. So that's a possibility. If you were saying we are a commission that's interested in pursuing a local historic district, I have a topic just on that, and provided that to a commission pretty recently too. A commission near Boston that had, with a lot of similarities actually to Orleans in terms of where they're at in terms of their preservation program. So they don't have a local historic district there. I know you have just a little small one that comes into on the Old Kings Highway, but not much of a local historic district in Orleans right now. So they are a similar situation. They are interested in establishing a local historic district and just want to hear all the steps and what they need to think about for things like that.
We have Orleans is about to adopt a new comprehensive plan, and within the plan there is highlighted the importance of historic structures, heritage, etc. What additional commissions or volunteer boards do you think would be of benefit to this commission to sit in on training that you could offer around the importance of the historic commission in relation to the rest of the community?
Do you mean more from outreach, how you're working with other people?
What other boards and commissions would benefit from understanding the importance of this commission in keeping the town's heritage.
Okay, what are the boards and commissions? So I don't know the whole list of boards and commissions that are in Orleans, but certainly the planning board. would
They're
rise to
like
the
any
top.
other town, there are many.
Yeah, and it varies by town. So you said you have a comprehensive plan going on right now. Do you have a comprehensive plan committee, sort of?
That's all done. It's about
It's all
to, it'll
done.
go to town meeting in May.
Okay.
So my question is, if we offer training around the importance of the commission, who else other than us should be in attendance? Building department, Board of Health, Select Board, who?
Yep, so you're talking about, I guess the question is staff people or,
Yes,
staff would be great if somebody from the building inspector's office could be there, definitely. Especially if it was anything about demolition delay, because they factor into your demolition delay bylaws so much.
right.
But sure, that'd be great, if they were there as well. If there's a, Board of Health and overlap with Historical Commission comes up in terms of, demolition by neglect, sometimes condemning properties, things like that. Are there other things that are coming up with Board of Health, that might relate to the Historical Commission? That's the one that usually comes to mind.
Okay. Other questions?
Yeah, that brings up an interesting one. Demolition by neglect is an interesting topic that I certainly would be willing to hear how other towns handle that, and what strategies there are to discourage that or prevent it. Is that something that you think you'd be able to talk to us about?
I do have a topic just on demolition by neglect. Yep, I'm gonna be, I'll be giving one of those fairly soon as well.
Anybody else? Anybody out there? Kevin?
This is Bruce Taub, Chris. I have a particular interest in things related to indigenous issues and indigenous history. What particular intersection or help can you be in relationship to our efforts to emphasize that? I think particularly the challenge for us is the desire to note sites of historic interest, but also to honor and protect them at the same time.
Yep, so that's part of the process of community historic preservation planning, identification, evaluation, protection. And so it's identifying and documenting all kinds of historic resources that are out there, and then evaluating their significance, and then thinking about the historic preservation toolbox, and looking at each of the tools that we have in the toolbox to protect historic resources, which cover everything in terms of just more public education about something, right up to something like a deed restriction or something really strong like that. But there's a whole range of tools that you might want to tailor to each kind of resource that in terms of how best to protect it.
And this may not relate to you directly, but we continue to be interested in the question of signage and how to get the signage to relate to the internet access and to historic documents and the like. Are you familiar with any of that? Or am I barking up the wrong tree? And I apologize for that.
Yep, so when I hear signage, there's usually either interpretive signs or there's like entering historic district signs. Interpretive signs are more of the kind that it's some sort of placard that describes a site in terms of its history, its significance, things like that. Is that?
Yes, and then to the extent that that links technologically, I suppose, other sources that a visitor could access from a computer or a phone.
Okay, so you're thinking about how could you have QR codes and things like that that are directly on the sign that they could access?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's pretty specific for what I could help you on. I mean, I've certainly seen
Right.
that as an option, but that's
Outside your purview.
in terms of my expertise, yeah, that's
All right.
beyond my technical range in terms of the QR codes and how best to do that. But certainly a great option, and I think for any kind of walking tours and any kind of option like that, we used to only think about a brochure for a walking tour, and there's a lot of options now in terms of apps and things that can be done online, so that really take you around to different places, and you can hear and experience them in many different ways now.
Thank you.
Anybody have anything else for Chris?
Mr. Chair, just a suggestion, as your liaison from the select board, also you have staff liaison here. I think this is great, you invited Chris and follow up to his outreach, but just a caution, a reminder, should you wish to go down the road of, procurement, I suggest, drafting a very tiny scope. Don't overdo it, literally 1 page or less. And work with Mike in terms of how to, kind of scope this and get it on the street, because you'd want, Chris to be a respondent, but again, municipal, public procurement needs to be open.
Right.
But I think this is great. I mean, he's certainly got the credentials, and I think we know, particularly a topic coming up, 7C, it might dovetail really well.
Right, exactly. Yep. Thanks for, good reminder. I'm sure Chris is aware of that, dealing with lots of public entities, that there's always some sort of process that has to be open.
Bidding process.
Right.
Chris, unless you have anything else for us, thank you. Appreciate your time, and we will let you know that, what we're planning to do.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris.
I'll talk to you later.
Yep.
All right, bye.
Bye. Okay, I noticed that we have Mr. Zender, Ben Zender, in the audience today. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks.
I don't know that it's necessary for you to be here, but always happy to have you along. We're going to have a discussion now that's relevant, obviously, to I think the reason that you're here. I think it'll be useful for you, particularly because you get involved in these demo
Understood,
things
yeah.
all the time. So rather than try to move yours up and get you out of
No,
here, if you don't mind.
it's one of the reasons why I'm here.
Okay, great.
For the discussion, thank
So
you.
we're going to go ahead and move to topic number 4, which is Chapter 106, the demolition delay bylaw in Orleans. And we have 2 topics here that are worth discussion. One is talking about the current definition that we have to live with while this is our bylaw. And I think it's important that we take an approach to this that prevents any other issues like the one we had with where the select board had to get involved, where we had some dispute over whether something was on the list or not. So one of the things so that's topic number 1, talk about how to make that list firmer and less ambiguous, and understand what that is. The definition, dealing with the definition as it is right now. And then the second topic will be what we want to do with the bylaw. And I may, ask everybody to keep that one a little bit contained, because we could probably spend a whole meeting just talking about that. But I think we should have a discussion to get that process started so that we can,
I'm just getting it ready.
oh, okay, so that we can move on it, in the future. But I don't know we necessarily want to try to spend a whole meeting doing that. So let me start off with the first topic then, the definition. And so the definition of our definition is very ambiguous, but it does mention the historical, I'm going to move a little bit out of the way because that way is. So the definition talks about something called a historical property survey. So that's a in the past there was a book that we had that people kept, but it was not very well maintained, and it was difficult. So what I would like to propose, we've spent or CPC has awarded us money to do a survey of all the historic properties in Orleans. It was done in 2023, and it's been updated since, and it's been kept current. And this is what I'm referring to, of course, the list that Eric Dre put together that we're working on right now, that we're trying to get a Form B for everything on this list. And Mike is gonna, if you would put up, Mike, the chart from, I'm sorry, well, let's go through this quickly. So this, if you go up one more slide, go back to the first one, that's the definition as it appears in the demo delay bylaw. It's a little convoluted, and so I put together a diagram that I think shows what that actually says, but I'm not a lawyer. If you can, we'll go to the next slide, Mike, the diagram one. So it looks like this, so that makes it even look more convoluted, but basically what it says is this, the first criterion is this on the historical property survey? And I think if we put everything on there that we think is historical, then we can avoid all the ambiguity that's in the rest of the bylaw. And this list that we have, and now Mike, if you wouldn't mind putting up the report that's got the charts in it that shows the numbers of those different properties. There are 595, give or take a couple. There's some issues with addresses here and there, but 595 are on the, here we go, yeah, figure out. Next one down, I think, right there. Yeah, so might be a little hard to read, but that shows the distribution of those 595 across the different periods. So before 1800, I'm doing this on memory because I can't really read it, 1800, 1850, 1850 to 1900, and then, so you can see that there are a lot of historic properties in Orleans, and a lot of them are very old. There are some that are newer, and they do have significance, at least according to Eric. So, and you can see this is a breakdown of the ownership, who owns those houses, and there 333 of them are owned by people whose addresses on the assessor's list are Orleans addresses for the ownership. And the rest are, you can see they're distributed, most of the rest are in Massachusetts, although there are a bunch of people out of state, mainly in Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey, who own some of those historic properties. So what I would like to do is formalize the fact that this is our list, that these 595 houses are what we consider significant houses that should be preserved. Now, there's still wiggle room in the definition, so that there's actually wiggle room in both directions, which I think is important. If for some reason we miss a house that's historically significant, that we've said was significant at some point, but we forgot to put it on our list, if it was built before 1920, it could still qualify under the rest of that ambiguous definition. So I don't think we have to worry too much if, oh, we missed one here and there.
My concern, and I'll give you a little anecdote, I received a call from a homeowner this morning, and before I returned the call, I looked up when the structure was done. It was 1920. It does not have a Form B. And so I'm concerned that if we have to have some language in whatever we do today to say, because I think it's coming. I think that Form B will come. That's all.
I was going to say, we should look at that specific house and make sure it's on our list.
Yeah.
But that's fine, and you know, if it's, like I said, I think we have some room if we miss any. I don't think we're missing any, or at least not many, if any, and certainly nothing before 1850 or so. So the other wiggle room in the other direction is this: just because it's on this list does not mean we have to impose the demolition delay. So if somebody comes here with a house that we've put in that was built in, say, 1960, and we put it on there because we think it has some historical significance, and then somebody wants to knock it down, and we say, well, it's not that significant, we could let it go. In other words, being on our list doesn't require that we impose a demolition delay. It only allows us to impose a demolition delay. So I think we're safe in that direction as well. So that's why I really think that this eliminates the ambiguity around that definition and keeps us out of exposure to having people say, hey, I should be on your list or I shouldn't be on your list. We could publish that list. Anybody who wants to can look up their house and see if they're on the list.
And we went through some of this last year. We got a recommendation from the state. They have a template and what they believe a model demolition bylaw should look like. Some very different than what we have, some similar. one of the things they do is they do a list, they define something that changes dynamically versus static.
Right.
And what they suggested was a time period, and anything that any house that's older than that time period should be considered. If you think about what you're talking about, if we establish a list and say, this is a list of what we have, what about 25 years from now? Things change over a period of time, and the definition of what's old and what's new changes over a period of time.
Right, there's nothing.
I think any list should be dynamic in nature and should deal with a time frame and should deal with an age versus saying it's 1920 or 1910 or 1950 or whatever it might be. But I think it needs to be a dynamic definition versus a static one.
I agree. When we change our bylaw, we should get rid of the 1920 and make it relative to today and back, either whatever number we want, 75 years, whatever. So I agree with that, Charles. Unfortunately, we're stuck for now with the bylaw.
Well, no, I understand that, but in other words, it shouldn't lock the definition in, that 20 years from now, it's the same definition as what it is now. It should be a definition that changes over time.
Right. And I think we reserve the right to change the list, to maintain the list, and to add things to it as time goes on. I think that's important in what you're saying, that the list isn't static, that there's 595 today, but 10 years from now, we might want to revisit the list and add things that weren't there, that weren't historically significant, but have become historically significant.
I guess it depends on the language we use.
Yeah.
I like I just like the language contributing as opposed to significant, but that may just be a minor thing. It's historically contributing.
No,
to
I
the
think it's
community.
relevant when we revisit for the new bylaw,
Yeah.
which is, the next topic of discussion, but we're stuck with, as I said, you were just saying,
We're stuck with it.
we got the bylaw that says
Yeah.
this is a significant building, there's nothing about contributory. And I think the other problem with contributory, it has to contribute to something. We don't have a local historic district, so it contributes, anything on this list, I would argue,
True.
contributes to the town's
Yeah.
historic,
Yeah.
character.
Yeah, yeah, but I know we've talked about, some of the, for instance, some of the homes, the modern homes that were, true modern homes that were built in the
Yeah.
late 60s, and, to me, they would be contributing in character,
Right,
to
exactly, which
to
is
the
why,
town.
yeah. So, what Mike has put up here, this, Charles, is the model, is the model bylaw statute, right? That's what we're looking at here? And
This is, yeah, we had provided from Mass Historical Commission.
yeah, and this is their definition of a significant building. And I think that does have the does it have a number of years in there?
Well, they put in 50 years.
Yeah, yeah.
So what it means, obviously, 30 years from now, the clock would continually
Yeah,
change.
right.
When we discussed this before, as a commission, we weren't totally happy with 50. And we thought there should be a time, instead of being a date, we thought there should be a number of years. But last year, I think people were more comfortable with something closer to 75 years versus 50, but that's all a matter of conversation. But this is dynamic in that sense. It's going to change every year.
Right. I think there's an argument to be made, and I think Eric would make it, because his list includes buildings that are less than 75 years old. I'm not sure about 50, but the argument is that there are things that very quickly become historically significant, that it doesn't necessarily take a very long time. And again, being on this list doesn't mean we have to impose the demolition delay, it just means we can. And right now, according to our definition, whatever the commission determines is a significant building can be on the list. And our criteria for determining the significant building was also in that report, in an appendix at the bottom that I sent out, that analysis that we looked at before that has all the data, that has in it the definition that this commission has used in the past for what a significant building is. And I think that's how we determine whether something gets on our survey, and I think we're free to put anything on there whenever we want to update the survey. But what I would like to do is formalize the fact that it's the survey that determines whether you need to come here and ask for a demolition.
Maybe there's you're eligible after a certain amount of years, or any home or building is eligible, kind of like the Hall of Fame, or it's like, 25 years after it was built, then you have to look back and say, is this an eligible building?
Yeah. So, I'm ready to vote and say, that's it. Going forward, this is our list. If you guys are comfortable with that, I think we can do that tonight. If not, we can push it off, have more discussion, and maybe take it up again in April.
Well, how is it that, what's the exact language going to say?
The language is what the language is in the bylaw, which says, if you, I don't know if you can put it back up there again, Mike.
Well, I have it.
Oh, so, yeah, it's the slide, yeah, that slide right there, it's right here, Bill. So this is what it says. The
No, I know.
significant- yeah,
I've got
okay.
that.
So that's what we have. So what I'm saying is, when we talk about, on this language, the language in here says, is on the historical property survey of the town of Orleans and on file with the Massachusetts Historical Commission, it means this list, this survey that we're talking about.
Okay.
That's what we're going to refer to when we refer to this language.
But just for clarification, I know this has been raised, but because that's a work in progress, where does that leave us?
Well, it's a work in progress to the extent that we're trying to get Form Bs for everybody
Right.
that's on that list. So most of them have the Form Bs. There are, I believe, around 150 or so that do not.
Yeah.
So, of the 595. So, some of those we want to redo. There's almost 300 that are old Form Bs, but they're still Form Bs, so that's not a problem. You can make an argument that the 150 that don't yet have Form Bs, somebody might say, well, those aren't historic. Well, they are, because we said they are, and in a lot of cases, they're on Form As, and they're listed with the Mass Historical Commission through that. So, and in the past, we've used that. There have been houses that haven't had Form Bs that we've said were subject to the demolition delay because they're historically significant.
Where do we stand legally if someone comes to us?
Well, I think we found that out when we had the other, it's. up-
Kevin would like to not repeat that.
Right, exactly,
Oh,
and that's.
that's already been taken care of.
Yeah.
This is all yours.
So, yeah, I mean, that's, I would like to put us on firmer ground, to say, if it's on this list, then that's, so this is, there's a time issue there where we do have some ambiguity on that 150. I would argue that they're already on our list, and the Mass Historical Commission knows about them because they're listed on Form
Okay,
As in most
that's fine.
cases. But we will finish those Form Bs. That's the highest priority for Eric Dre right now to
Right.
work on, is doing the Form Bs where they don't already exist.
I think the risk
There's
is
still,
that,
there's still 2 years' worth of work that hasn't even been funded yet at this time, and maybe 3.
A lot of those will be the redos, yes. There'll be a few, after this year, you're right, there'll still be some with no Form Bs, but most of the remaining work will be the redo.
And I would suggest that if you got language you want to use, you take that language, circulate it to the committee, and we discuss it next meeting and decide what we want to do. Because I'm not prepared to vote on something without understanding the total language at this point.
Okay, that's fine. I don't think there's any different language. There's a list. I'll be happy to pass around the list and the context for what I think is the reason we should make that list align with this language.
I agree with the intent. I think the risk is that you do this, and then, in fact, the public perception is, they have this Form B rule, and I'm on Form A, but they're enforcing it on me, and then there's some more feeling that there's this overreach, and, we don't really have our act together, and it's capricious, you know what I mean?
That's the situation we're in right now.
Okay,
So
well,
that's what I'm trying to get out of.
I know, I know.
So by saying there's a list of 595, and if you're on that list, then you're in, if you're not, you're out, that makes it clear. And if there's an argument around those 152 that we're still working on, that don't have, and many of those, by the way, are after 1950, not many, some. And very few are early houses, because we've done Form Bs in most of those, but there are some. But what I'm saying is, that ambiguity, now, instead of being for every house in Orleans, it's only the 152 that we're still working on the Form Bs. And the 595, the whole rest of the list, outside of that 150, is now taken care of. We wouldn't have that ambiguity anymore. We'd be out of that situation.
Do we know that everything that we would consider or could consider historical is on that list? I mean, Bill brought up some time ago that he thought a lot of the boathouses should be on that list. and they're not on that list.
I don't know that we do know that everything is on that list. We,
So I don't think we should lock it in, that if it's not on this list, it's not historic.
well, there's two things about that, Charles. One is, I also don't know if everything is not on that list. But the second thing is, if we do that, we're not hurting ourselves in any way, because you're gonna have the same level of ambiguity. Right now, anybody could challenge anything that we have, the oldest house, the newest house. So what I'm saying is, we do not have anything official when we point to the inventory of, the survey inventory in this definition. We have nothing that says this is the survey inventory of this definition. I think that's a mistake. I think we should say this is our definition. Because so if you leave it blank, then yeah, maybe somebody comes and says, we went on that down a boathouse, and oh, we forgot to put that on our list. But I think that's less likely to happen. And there's nothing that says we can't look at our list and say, oh, we need to add these 5 buildings to our list. At least we can still have something that is the official survey inventory.
Is it possible to work with an attorney sort of on the language so that, you know, it's clear we're moving in the direction that you're suggesting, but also, you know, gives us a legal framework to include, you know, stuff that we have just made not be on the radar? Or that
That might not be, first of all, again, the language that we have is this language.
Yeah.
The next discussion about what we'd like to do to change this, which would require a bylaw change in town meeting, we can put any language we want. But for now, this is the language we have. Now, I'm happy to ask a lawyer if they think that doing what I'm suggesting is going to work, or, you know, is a good idea or a bad idea. But, and fine, you know, I'd be happy to do that. Maybe we have a council now that would be able to render an opinion on that.
And if I can add, Mr. Chair, I think all you're asking on this one item is under 4A on your agenda, and you haven't really described this on your agenda as a discussion or a vote item. So to some of your other members who were saying they'd like to wait, I think from a public perception and a notice, you might want to put together a very short memo, Mr. Chair, referencing the current bylaw provides for a vote of this commission, blah, blah, blah. Here's your memo recommending that we discuss and may vote on this at your next meeting, and have that as an item. And make it just really crystal clear. This is not a bylaw edit. This is just operating within your current framework to avoid any confusion down the road. That, like you said, to Charles' question, what if we miss something? Again, the bylaw isn't limiting you from adding.
Right.
You're just saying, at least date certain, the list is good. I mean,
Correct.
all the other variables are still going to be in play.
Yeah.
So I guess my last question is, would it be of any benefit for us to have in attendance at that next meeting a member of the building department? Because it is to them that those applications first come. And for them, for those people in that department to understand clearly what it is that we are doing.
Yeah,
Do they only look at Form Bs, or do they look at the Form As?
No.
If they
I don't
just
know.
look at Form
They look at
Bs, they're
dates.
gonna miss
They look at
it.
They just look at dates.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They look at dates,
Yeah.
period.
If I could, I have a number of comments on this that I think may be helpful. First of all, I think your bylaw right now is overcomplicated. It's framed in the conjunctive, which just doesn't work, okay? So if this were my bylaw, you would pick a date before which you think Orleans has an historical character. And I'm not suggesting there aren't structures afterwards, 1920, 1925, 35, whatever that date is. And you should say any structure built prior to that date is automatically a significant structure, regardless of what list it's on, period. And then you should get rid of that whole B section. And then keep C, they say any structure that's been determined by this board
Right.
to have those, and I think your definition's fine,
Yeah.
is also a significant structure. Now, here's where I differ maybe from the chair. You have a Form B and you have a historical list. That really is nothing more than a compilation of structures that may be a certain age and in a certain neighborhood. I think when you make something a significant structure, you basically burden the homeowner with a significant property burden, which is that they're going to have to come in front of this board. They're going to have to demonstrate that the property is not preferably preserved. They're going to have to wait out a construction period when costs go up and everything else. I think what this board owes it to the landowners is to create a list, not of a Form B list, and not even of an historical structure list, but a list of structures that this board determines after a hearing is either historically or architecturally significant in terms of period style, is associated with a certain thing. And you revisit that list every year.
So-
And that way, well, let me just finish. That way, when an applicant wants to undertake a demolition, all they have to do is submit the application to the building inspector. He or she looks at that list and says, okay, it's older than 1925, it's older than 1930, or it's been determined by this board to be either a Marcel Breuer house or a whatever house, or it's determined to be, something associated with the Howard Johnsons, or something that is important, and that list is updated every year, and that way, there's no question. And that goes one further step, which is that your definition of preferably preserved is so lacking that I can tell you from experience, and we all know this, when a structure comes in here as a significant building, if there's a whiff of historical structure about it, or association, there's no way you're not going to make it preferably preserved, because there's no burden on you to not do it. So in reality, the burden on the applicant is not the finding of being preferably preserved. It's the burden of being a significant structure. That's in reality. So if it were me, pick a date. And that will cover 80% of all the structures you want to regulate, and then make that list and hold the hearing and say, okay, we're looking at 355 Tonsett, this was designed by so-and-so, we think it should be on the list or it shouldn't. And I'll bet you can work through those houses in
So
3 meetings.
let me respond
Yeah,
to
thank
two
you.
things. Sure. So first of all, I think the specific date is subject to Charles's problem, because if we put another specific date in the next bylaw, then the next commissioner's
No,
gonna have a
because,
problem.
He said he
no,
gets
because
reviewed
that
every
date
year.
just establishes the historic nature of the
Yeah,
town.
but no, but you're assuming that there's nothing that's gonna be built in, between now and when the next change is, that's going to, so let's say the date is, pick a date, 1925.
No, because I'm assuming that after that date, once you've gone through and determined all the structures you think are historically significant, right? Then what you're going to do is you're going to have an ongoing process where you identify additional structures that you think, maybe.
So then the date becomes irrelevant then at that point.
No, the date of 1925 makes sure that every structure that's going to preserve the historic character, meaning the Cape Cod Colonial Village character, is going to be preserved, is going to be looked at no matter what.
Yeah.
And then other structures will come up. I mean, there will be structures that come up that you think are important that you can add to that list on the second section.
Let me come back to it, because I still
Yeah,
think, I still
thank you.
don't agree with that.
I understand.
Okay? So,
No, okay.
but the second part of what you're saying, I also, I think is what we're doing. So, what we're trying to do is to tell everybody that these 595 buildings, and I'm pretty sure that's an exhaustive list, that we paid Eric Dre to do, that's, anybody who owns one of those properties has a significant building. So they should know that from the get-go. So it's all, this is doing what you're suggesting we do, which is identify all of the significant buildings. That's what this list of 595 is. Those are the.
Okay, so I have one question then.
But let me finish. So when we
Okay.
go back, so if we do that, if something qualifies under C there, shame on us, because it should have been on our list to begin with. So that makes that irrelevant. But then the date specific, I think you're right, we have to update that list as we go forward, because something that was built in, say, 1950, that right now we don't think is very significant, maybe 10 years from now, it's gonna turn out that, wow, we don't build them like that anymore.
Understood.
Let's put that on the list. So I think we're in agreement on
think so.
that, what that list is about. The list should be all the buildings, that if you own one of these, you should know that you have the burden of coming before the historical commission to get a demolition.
So I have a question. Of those 595 properties, has this board looked at each of those properties to determine whether they are historically or architecturally significant in some way?
So-
That's what Eric Dre's doing.
Yeah, we have,
No,
we've hired a
The answer's
preservation
no. The
consultant.
answer's no.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, look, I think the Form B and the survey is your resource for undertaking to create that list, but
Yeah.
the most important thing is that when I go to the building department, that the building inspector can look at that and say, look,
Right, I agree. They should be able to look at the list and say.
and
you're on
if
the
you
list.
just overshoot and say, look, we're gonna throw the Form B on there, we're gonna throw a historical survey, what you're doing is you're burdening an unknown number of landowners
No, we're only-
with this process where you haven't made that determination yet that they're structured, because I guarantee if you go through every one of those, you're gonna find some houses, you're gonna go out there and you're gonna be like.
You're right, but
Right.
that's that's part of the process. So let me say, I want to qualify the no that Charles gave you, because what
Sure.
we've done is we've paid a historical preservationist to go through every single one of these buildings to update the Form Bs and to put a history associated with every one of those buildings. So it would be really, very easy for us to go through
Right.
and look at that and say, yes, we agree with this is what we think this ought to be preserved, or no, you know what, this is a marginal case, we're not gonna burden the homeowner. So I think that we've done the proper work.
And you gotta be careful though. The direction that Eric Dre was done 3 or 4 years ago, I don't personally, and I was here, but I don't personally remember what instructions he was given, what parameters he was given at that time period. They may or may not be appropriate at this time. A couple other things. I can tell you that this commission last year was ready to vote for 1950, being the date that it would start at. Now, we didn't get there, we postponed it, but at least last year, we were ready to vote for 1950 being the starting point. We figured that was 75 years, we figured that was that was pretty significant at that time. The other thing from what you said, Ben, and anything that happens, there has to be a process. If that somebody can't automatically get an approval if something got missed. There has to be a process where the board can go back and add something even after a process or an appeal has gotten started if they just missed something, because I guarantee you, there'll be misses that take place.
Yeah, but the question really becomes who bears the burden of this? And so what I'm suggesting is this, how you look at a structure now. Let's say, just pick a structure that's on your Form B, and you all take a drive down, you look at the structure, and you have a discussion, and you look at all that, and you say, okay, we think this is a structure that really is importantly associated with an architectural or a cultural thing, we think that's important. That's a good decision that you make, because you're making that in the context of the other homes that you're looking at. When an applicant comes in with an application, and you're looking at a pending demolition 6 months from now, I always tell my clients, it becomes the most important structure in Orleans. And I don't think that's the lens through which you should be making this determination. So,
I just let me say, I sort of take offense to this
feel free.
bearing the burden, because, you know, there are no meaningful measures in this town to protect historic property. So, you know, and not only that, but over the last 50 years, dozens, you know, hundreds perhaps, of buildings have disappeared, and homes. And they've been replaced in many cases, you know, with homes that are out of scale, that have raised woods and changed the fundamental character of this town. So burden, I don't really feel like I got a lot of sympathy for people who all they have to do is wait 12 months and then they can just plow down a building that's been there for, you know, 100 years.
Fair enough.
I think Thaddeus and I and Amanda were in a meeting the other day, and what strikes me in part of this conversation, and there's no way to measure this, but someone said, you know, instead of historic all the time, we need to talk about the heritage of the cultural heritage associated with the architectural elements in this community. And while there's no way to measure it, I do think that fundamental to this conversation is how do we preserve the heritage of this community and what it looks like and what it will look like going forward. And, you know, this gets into the weeds and we need to be there. I understand that. But it's a larger discussion.
So let me put some closure to this, because we do have other things on the agenda. I will undertake to do what Kevin suggested, which is put together what I'm proposing in a memo.
Sure.
And then we can further discuss it and decide if that's something we want to do. Maybe, Mike, now that I understand we do have counsel that's available, maybe we'll even ask the council's opinion on what we need to say around this to make this our official survey list. The other thing I'll do is I'll talk to Eric and find out exactly what criteria he used. I believe it's what we've been using and what Ron put together and
And would
was
you,
in that report.
when you have that discussion, ask him what Charles brought up, that I brought up a couple of years ago, and that is the boathouses that surround our bodies of water.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, just, I echo what Bill said in terms of, at that next meeting, do have the building commissioner here, because, not to relive that appeal, Attorney Flores, who's now Judge Attorney Flores, said, there was a book, you know, when someone would come in with a building permit application, the book was there, where's the book?
Yeah,
So
we
this
want to
list
give him the book, yeah.
serves the purpose of the book, so.
Yeah, and I think Eric is actually, is Eric going to be on the, I think we asked Eric to come to the next meeting. I think.
I haven't scheduled.
Oh, okay. All right, so I will do that. Before we leave this, I think we can take care of the other item that Ben.
Which is why I really came here.
Yeah, so Ben came here because he's proposed, the folks at 355 Tonsett want to knock their building down.
Right.
Now, this is an interesting case, which I think illustrates why we need to do what we need to do. So this building, 355 Tonsett, was built in 1925, Ben?
I'm sorry, no, there are two
1904.
structures, 1905 and 1946. The
Okay.
garage is 1946, the house, part of the house was 1905.
So it's not on our list.
No.
355 Tonsett, built in 1905, is not on the list of 595 buildings.
Right.
So you say, why is that? Well, it turns out that this building has been modified many times, including in 1945. So I spoke to Eric specifically about this building and said, Eric, why is this 1905 structure not a significant building? And Eric said that, in his opinion, the changes that were made to it over the years, let me read what he says. I had a look at it back in 2023 and determined that it was an a-stylistic early 20th century house that had received numerous additions, so I did not recommend it for survey. So in other words, this house is old, but our consultant does not think this is a historically significant building. It may be if it had stayed as a 1905
Right.
original property, but
Right.
it was changed and it no longer holds any significance.
And I might note, this commission never agreed or disagreed with him, and it does bring into question what parameters he made his decisions on creating that list in the first place.
Right.
Because
Exactly.
I can pretty well guarantee this commission never evaluated his decision-making on that at all.
I don't want to bleed back into the last discussion, but that's exactly why your list that's been presented by Eric Dray needs to be reviewed, and each property needs to be looked at by you to put it on that list, and to make sure that maybe the next one wouldn't have to come in front of you, and we would, yeah, so.
I agree with that,
Right.
that the list should be the commission's best sense of what those buildings are. All I want to do is establish that list as being what we look at when we say inventory survey. The specifics of the list,
Well, one more final point, though.
have to-
If you do go back and look at that list with an eye towards putting them on your list of significant structures, you're gonna really inoculate yourself against an appeal. Because if you just say, look, we're gonna take the Form B, or we're gonna take our Eric Dray survey, and we're just gonna put everything on there, somebody doesn't like your results, and say, wait a minute.
But I think that the thing is about that, and you know, again, considering it's gonna change, that, what you're saying is that we basically have to have a meeting of the commission to vote on whether each of those 595 properties is historically significant, but nobody's asked us to knock it down. So I don't think there's any harm in having that process happen when somebody proposes to demolish a building, and then we go look and say, do we agree with this or do we don't agree with that this should be carefully preserved? I would even argue it's better to make that as a timely decision than for us to do it now, because it might be in the context of a lot of other things.
I may disagree with you, but the bylaw says has previously been
Right.
determined.
Exactly.
So,
Previously determined is on the list. We put it on the list.
I understand, but if you read a bylaw that says you get to make it in real time, again,
No, the bylaw says you can impose a delay or not impose a delay. By putting it on the list, we say we want to have that conversation. I don't think there's anything wrong with that as a process.
So I have a question. I thought I heard that 355 Tonsett was not on the Form A. I've
No,
got
it
a
is on the
list here
Form A.
that was handed out on page 57.
It is
that
on
should-
the Form A.
It is on a Form A?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what, I thought I heard that
but it's not on the list.
There's no separate Form B for it, but the property address is listed as, I believe it's listed as being part of a neighborhood, the
Yeah.
Wisett neighborhood.
So there are hundreds of properties on
Just
the
like
Form
the
As
Right.
that are not on the 595, the list of the survey.
Just like the Heights, you
Right.
know?
And do we
The last
know
one down
all
on
those
the right.
properties shouldn't be or should be? I think the answer is we don't.
355 is the last one down on the right.
We're trusting that Eric has done the survey, that's
Well,
what we
he's
had.
obviously made discretionary
Burgers last one down,
decisions
right.
that have not been reviewed by
Yeah.
the commission.
Well,
I'm not saying they weren't appropriate, I'm just simply saying there was obviously discretionary decisions made.
That's true, but we've had the survey, the commission's had the survey now since 2023.
in this case, I would want to know more of what the original turn-of-the-century building was. I mean, I looked at the property, and it is, it's a bit of a hodgepodge of kind of, I don't know, looked like maybe 60s or 70s additions. But, the Tonset Road area has some of the most important homes architecturally and historically in the town.
But this is a good example of the bind we're in right now, Thaddeus, that I'm trying to get us out of by saying, let's codify the list.
Right.
Because this doesn't have a Form Form B, it's on a Form A.
Yep.
And yes, it was built in 1905, but whether it meets any other parts of this definition are
Right.
arguable at best, because we haven't determined it to be significant or done any of those other things that are on it.
Understood, yeah.
So we don't have a basis, if we wanted to, we don't have a basis, I don't believe, for imposing a demolition
Can we,
delay on this property.
before we make that judgment, can we have Ben make his presentation to us?
No, Ben's not here to make
Ben
that
is not here to
presentation.
make.
He's not there?
So
Okay,
this
I
is-
thought he was here to
this
make a
is- Just to
presentation.
clarify.
I think I just did, I just told you what years they were built. So, no, I don't want to get you away.
This is on the agenda today, because this was submitted with the, we'll call them vagaries that were highlighted as far as which list, and if it was appropriate to conduct a hearing.
So we're not making a vote on whether or not this should be preferably reserved?
No.
Okay, I misunderstood, that's fine.
So if you would like to notice a public hearing, we have some time within the 45-day window we can do that. Looking at the application that was submitted, again, it's unclear if the commission would like to go down that path. We have an agenda item today where we can vote and decide not to hold a public hearing based on the information that is submitted within in the packet for the notice of intent.
Well, based on everything that's been said, and based on the fact that Eric made a decision not to put this on, that was not reviewed, I think we should have a public hearing.
No, I don't see, and I disagree, because we don't have a basis to have a public hearing. This doesn't have a Form B, it doesn't meet any part of our demolition definition that I can see.
Do you mind if I just walk the board through the standard for a significant building?
Sure.
Okay, this is the standard under your bylaw. Built in or prior to 1920, yes, and listed in or within an area in the National Register or State Register, no, okay? Or has been previously determined by vote of the commission to be historically or architecturally significant in terms of period, style, method of building, or is importantly associated with one of, and it has not been previously determined. I think the only thing you can do is to permit your staff to inform the building inspector that this is not subject to demolition delay bylaw.
Wait, do we not have any ability to learn more about this property? Just
You can
to
learn more about the
understand
property, but
what,
we
feel
don't have-
free.
There's no basis in the current demo delay bylaw to impose a delay on this building, because it doesn't meet one, because it's not on our list. It does meet two, but it has to meet two and B or C, and it doesn't meet B or C. So it doesn't fit in the, I think we would lose a case if somebody said, why are if somebody challenged whether we can impose a demolition delay on this house, I don't see how in this demolition delay we could impose it.
I'm not saying impose or not impose, I'm just saying, we know there was a structure built in 1904. What do we know about it? What is it? What would it be that we would be making a decision on?
You can only have a hearing if it's a significant building. And it doesn't meet the definition for a significant building. I mean, it has to be by prior 1920 and has to be on your list. So I don't think the board has the jurisdictional ability to make that
So
determination.
this emphasizes what Charles is saying, which is we are totally dependent at the moment, based on this definition, on what is what we say is a significant, or is on the inventory survey. And what we said was on the inventory survey is we delegated that authority to Eric Dre to create the inventory survey. And so that's what we have today. We have that, or we have these other definitions, and this house doesn't meet any of these others.
Yeah.
Which, and again, I'm gonna go back to my point. In an objective world, there's no reason why the board would be imposing a demolition delay on this property. I'm telling you, based on the architecture of the structure, there's not. So the fact that a member wants to dig more deeply into this and ask for more, just proves my point. It becomes the most important structure at that moment, so, which is why you have to have this list.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think, fact-finding is a bad thing. I mean, you're losing, you're losing a ton of buildings, you ought to know what you're losing.
Yeah, but fact-finding without jurisdictional authority while the homeowner is sitting online listening to you determine whether or not you're gonna put his property through demolition delay is a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's always a bad thing.
I don't think that we can, I don't disagree that it would be interesting and useful to know the history of this building and what we're losing. And I think any time you lose something that's over 100 years old, you're losing something. It goes without saying. So I don't think that's a problem, but I don't think we can do anything that gets in the way of what the owner wants to do.
Actually, I think we can request something. We have a number of hearings over a period of time. Some we agree with, some we disagree with. Some when we do our due diligence, we decide that the presentation that's been made by the other side, by the applicant is appropriate, and we say it's fine for demolition delay. Some we put on a demolition delay. I don't think that precludes us from having a discussion about this in a hearing, and we'll make it, and hopefully we'd make an informed judgment once we did that.
Okay, well, we're in a hearing right now, let's do it.
No, we're not in a hearing because you have to have public notice and all that, but hold on. Charles, I disagree because we don't have a basis to have this house come to a hearing. We can't point to anything in this definition that says that this house is able to have a demolition delay imposed on it. There's nothing in this definition that allows us to impose a demolition delay on this house.
So I think if we had a hearing and that turned out to be true, then we probably would not impose a demolition delay.
What's the basis you're gonna have a hearing?
Because I'm
for?
not prepared to make that judgment at this point.
So my reading of this aligns with Ed's, and the reason these two agenda items are back-to-back are to highlight the need to review 106 and to have some clarity both on the list and what 106 is defining as a significant building.
Your reading is the same as mine, which is you can't call a hearing for a building that's not a significant building.
Reading through this, I don't see how what was submitted meets the test of A, B, and C.
Yeah. So you can only vote on whether something is preferably preserved if it's a significant building.
Specifically, if you look at 106.3, no permit for the demolition of a significant building as defined in section 2.3 shall be issued except as set forth hereunder. If it's not a significant building, there's no jurisdiction by this board to impose any type of a demolition delay or even to hold a hearing on it. So I think the confusion here is that it's on as an agenda item, right, Mike? So,
Because I did not want to not bring this before the board and
Well,
because we had this.
Well, see,
yeah, but that's an interesting point, because, if it is brought before the board, you ought to have the opportunity to ask some questions and know what
Well,
you're talking about.
No, I
and that's
wanted it
all.
on the agenda because I wanted to point it out as a good case, a good example of why we have to improve the definition, of why we need the inventory list. Because we have cases like this where it's ambiguous. Obviously, some of us would like to see a hearing for this and discuss whether we should preserve it or not, but we don't have the ability to do that because our definition is not adequate and because we haven't done the homework to make all the buildings that we want to preserve required to come here for a hearing. And that's what I want to do by having this list be our exhaustive list of the things that we want to preserve in Orleans.
But I'm not sure our definition, and I'm not sure, I'm just saying I'm not sure before I even say it, that our definition of the relationship of significant buildings in Form A versus Form B has always been as it's being described now. I have to take a look, but I have memories of stuff on Form As being viewed as being significant, even if they weren't on Form Bs.
Yeah, no,
I
that's-
may be wrong.
No, you're
but-
right, that's happened. But it's happened despite the ambiguity in this process. And it's happened because we've been able to say that we think it's a historic building. But that's exactly how we ended up with the situation we had in the Heights. Yeah, because that building, they argued was not on our list. That's where the book came up, because we don't have the book anymore. And it was on.
I don't know if we ever had the book, but that's, I don't know if that book ever.
Yeah, anyway,
You might wanna
I-
believe
yeah,
Judge Torres Flores now.
Yeah.
I mean, I think she's accurate. I think, you know, the difference with the Heights was the Form A actually did list every parcel by number.
Yeah.
That was part of our quandary. Where here, you don't have this numbered parcel. In fact, I was sitting with Amanda looking at both this 1905 one and the 1946. I mean, honest to God, you guys, these have been bastardized over the years. I mean, you know, I agree with you, Thaddeus, but want to hang on to, but have you actually looked at it?
That property?
Yes.
I was there today.
But do you really see?
No, not necessarily, I don't. And I'm not saying, all I'm saying is I'd like to be, if it comes before us, I'd like to be informed. I have a date, 1904.
Yeah.
It could have been, I mean, it doesn't look inherently, contributing in my mind, but still, I mean, they're precious few and they're going fast. So let's know what we're doing when we do it.
Right, but
Putting aside the emotion, I agree with the member. You should have the ability to look at a property and understand completely what it is and what's being changed. But that ability springs from a structure being a significant structure. So that's the point at which this board, in fact, the entire section of the bylaw that talks about determination of significant structures, your only involvement is making that previous determination of whether it's importantly associated or it's historically cultural. Once you've made that, this is the building inspector's bailiwick.
Exactly.
He looks at the date, and he looks at whether that's been determined or whether it's on the national or state register. This really, it only comes in front of your board as a discussion item because the chair and Mr. Sleeter thought it was important that you look at this. And I think it's illustrative.
right, that was the point. I want us to
Yeah.
improve, under the current definition we're stuck with, we have to figure out how we can operate, and then we have to look at what's a better definition. And this was a good case to inform both of those. But I think it's clear that we don't have jurisdiction on this building, and I think we should vote to say that there shouldn't be a hearing on this building, because it doesn't qualify under our current.
I don't think you vote.
You don't think we even have to vote?
No, I don't think there's anything for you to vote on.
I was just gonna say.
There's nothing to vote on, but I would go one step further, and I'm gonna twist this around for the chair really quickly. I felt coming into this hearing, or this meeting, that the reason that this property was on the agenda was to show the board what structures maybe shouldn't be before this board. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Litro, but it was really kind of like, look, this is the kind of structure that Mr. Dre identified as probably not worth your time or the applicant's money.
Right.
And it's turned itself around into like, this is why we need to list, because we don't get to look at this structure. So I'm feeling a little Kafkaesque
Well,
about this whole thing. So-
A little of both.
I wanted
Yeah.
to make sure that you were comfortable
Right.
and the owners are comfortable, that they're not gonna, this isn't gonna come back and bite you at some other point.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I
So if
really
you're
do.
comfortable that, somebody else
As
is.
long as Mrs. Lidro can inform the building inspector that this project does not require any further historic review, I'll walk out and keep my mouth shut, and I won't bother getting
Well,
again.
I don't know if Mike feels he can do that, or if he would like to have the commission tell
Yeah.
him he could do that. Are you comfortable doing that now, or would you like us to vote on that that's what we want you to do?
You can't vote.
You don't think we can even have a vote? I think we can vote to,
You can't vote.
I think
You have to-
I think you just say after discussion, we agree with
are
it.
you comfortable with that, John?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
You can't vote.
Why can't you vote? We could, all we're voting on is whether we're comfortable with Mike.
Because you have to post this and all.
No, that would be if we had a hearing.
Well, not a hearing. You
Well,
can
no,
vote
we-
to direct me to communicate with Ben, communicate with the building
Yeah.
commission. That's-
That I'm fine with.
Yeah,
That's-
that's what I'm
that would be-
saying. Yeah, that we're not, it's not that we're voting not to find this.
Correct.
I just want to
Perfectly observed, because we
That needs to be doing it
We
too.
can't do that. So what we need then is a motion to, direct Mike that we don't believe this building is eligible for a demolition delay hearing. Is that,
That it constitutes a significant structure.
that it constitutes a significant structure by our demolition delay bylaw definition? Somebody want to move
I'm
that?
not sure that, it, I guess my concern about that vote is that if somebody in the neighborhood were to say, why did they take that vote without a hearing? That's why I just assume.
We can't have a hearing, that's the point. The point
That's
is.
correct, so we don't need to vote at all.
Okay, that's fine, then,
The sense.
Leave it
That's also
alone.
fine.
all right, then we'll leave it there.
I'm fine with that.
All right,
Thank you all.
thank you. Appreciate that. Hope to see you here infrequently for buildings that are.
I have to say, but one thing I have to say, boathouses, I think you all should jump on boathouses, because
Okay.
I don't know if you're following the Pleasant Bay Alliance's
Oh, yeah.
position on boathouses, and if it's up to them, they're all gonna go, and I have to say, they're probably one of the most enjoyable facets of this town.
Yeah.
There
those
there are in excess of 40.
And they're beautiful, most of them are
boathouses on
beautiful,
Pleasant
so,
Bay.
yeah.
So we
I
should.
also think we should ask, I also think besides the boathouses, we should ask Eric Dre for a list of everything he did not list and made a discretionary decision on.
Okay.
And then we should discuss it, whether or not we think that's appropriate.
And while you're at it, Steve Swain did a really nice architectural study of all the outhouses on the outer beach. I'm saying that partially, Jess, but not completely, so, yeah, they're beautiful, so. Okay, thank you all.
Take care.
Okay,
Thanks.
See you then.
I'll do that. I can also programmatically create a list of everything that's old that's not on Eric's list and ask him
But
why.
and I've been here for 6 years. I had no idea that he had made discretionary decisions not to put some things on the list. Had no idea.
I think we need a discussion with Eric. I know we talked
Yeah,
about it.
I think we'll have him come in at the next meeting.
Okay.
If he's available.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that was very interesting. I hope you found it interesting, Kevin.
It was good.
Took care of that one. So number 6, Charles, is a liaison update. I know you've.
There haven't been
Okay.
any CPC meetings for the last 2 months.
Okay, good.
So once they passed the last CPC budget, nothing's happened,
Okay, that's easy
one
enough.
way or the other.
I'll just say, Mr. Chair, we have the project list that was voted, and to my knowledge, it hasn't been placed or recommended, but I heard no concerns from the select board, so the list that was voted
Yeah.
is what's going to town meeting.
Hmm,
You can assume that.
Okay,
We could jump to 7C.
yeah, want to do that? Otherwise, I could quickly go through A and B if you want. If we want to do that first to get them out of the way, then we can take the rest of our time on C. Okay, let's do that. So the Form B project inventory, we're going to ask Eric, I think, to come up and update that. And there is in the packet a report I put together that has all of the buildings, the 595, the breakdown historically where they are, who owns them. It also has breakdowns of which ones need new Form Bs and which ones don't. And it has a list of what's in the Old Kings Highway District and what isn't. So it shows the houses that meet the criteria, the other criteria that are in our demo delay bylaw. So, and then at the bottom of it is what Ron has been pushing for years, is how we decide if something is historically significant. And I assume that that's, but I'm going to check with Eric, that's informed what he did. So I would say look at that report. I know that this was a long packet because there was a very long thing in there from the Form A list, but if you get past all that, check out that report. I think it's useful to look at.
This is what he's working on from last year's money, not the upcoming year, correct?
No, we combined them, 15,000 that was left over from 2025 and 25,000 in 2020, fiscal year
Right,
2026.
but not the next year.
No, right, not
Right,
the
I
next year, not
understand, I
27.
understand.
Unavailable to July.
I understand. We can prepare a list, but we can't do anything about it.
No, well, I think that, right, he's, though they're all on the list, it's just a question of when he gets to them. Unless we change the list, which, we could do. All right, and then all I'll say about the archaeology project is that Pal, who's the folks working on this, Holly Herbster is the archaeologist. That is also in the packet. There's an update from her. She is going to very soon now walk over the 4 properties, and I'll quickly, Woods Cove, Henson's Cove, Nemaquoit Bog and Wood, and Meadow Bog, and the Twinings Pond Conservation Areas. Those are the areas that are going to get the reconnaissance survey. And Bruce, I know this is always part of your interest. We have a letter out to David Whedon at the Wampanoag Historical Preservation Office. And there's been an informal conversation with somebody else at the Aquinnah Historic Preservation Office. And in addition to that, the OCT folks that I'm working with, Tom Karras, has been talking to the Native Land Preservation Group. I forget the exact name of that is.
Native Land Conservancy.
Thank you, Native Land Conservancy. They're also involved. So it's all the bases are covered there. The project is moving along very nicely, and there's a couple of documents that are available. If anybody's interested, I can send them out to you. Mike's got.
What's the time period of getting this done and submitting the money for payment?
The time period for getting it done is September. There's gonna be a presentation to this commission, and OCT will join us for that. So that's when the end point is, and I don't know what PAL is doing in terms of payment schedule.
So it is the intention to ask CPC to carry the money over?
Yes.
I have no idea how CPC will vote. I can tell you that their intention level has been not to carry over money. I'm not saying that's what they'll do, but the express intention level is not to carry money over from one year to another. I'll bring this up at the next meeting.
From approved projects that have grant agreements?
Yeah, because there were a lot of stuff that was carried over for a long period of time, so.
It was like 7 years worth of $4,000 worth of stuff.
This is a timely.
Kevin, I am relatively sure it'll be carried over, but it has to be addressed, because what I said is an accurate reflection of what dialogue has been at the meeting from some of the members.
Wow.
I am sure it'll be carried over, but it needs to be addressed.
Our Form B project is in that, the 15,000 from the 2025 fiscal year is in that category.
They were talking about going forward, not going backwards. But it'll be addressed. It'll be addressed.
Okay, let me know if you need anything from me about, what's going on with that. I have a schedule for the project and everything if you want.
You probably should give me the schedule and where it's going to be, and I'll bring it up in a project update at the next CPC meeting.
Okay, now, clears the way, and Amanda and Kevin, thank you. Well, Kevin has to be here anyway, but Amanda, thank you for sitting through all that. Appreciate you being here. And we are moving to item number, is that 7C, and that is, Thaddeus, you have the floor.
Great, thank you, and thanks, Kevin, thank you, Amanda. Enjoyed yesterday's conversation, if that was yesterday, Monday?
I think it was yesterday.
I'm confused.
No, maybe it was Monday.
It was
Yeah, it was
Monday,
Monday.
yeah. And I appreciate also, the work you're doing on, I know we talked about social media, and I went back and now
I
populated,
noticed you're
and
now following us.
yes,
Thank
and
you.
I do see the historic efforts.
Yeah.
Let me take just a couple minutes. I had some time over Christmas to think about, think about sort of what I was getting into on the board here, and sort of what I perceive to be some of the opportunities and challenges. Obviously, I'm a newcomer here. You guys have been living this a lot longer than I have. I do have a perspective, dating back to the 60s here, but in terms of being a homeowner, very new. But I really appreciate the opportunity to participate in this conversation. I just want to talk a little bit. We've talked about awareness, and I want to talk, about really what is our objective. And to me, the objective is really preserving homes and buildings. So how do we get there? The one thing that occurred to me, sort of when I started on this board, was that really, well, as I said, I don't think there's, waiting 12 months to knock down a home, not a big deal. It's a real liability in my view. But why is it? My understanding in talking to people, there's some economic fears, there is fear about local government overreach, But clearly, you know, if you go back to the 90s, or I think it was last year or the year before, you know, the historic preservation efforts have been knocked back. I see historic preservation as really vital, existential to Orleans. You know, I look at the success that conservation has had and that affordable housing has had, and I think, you know, there's got to be a way. This is an important topic. We had a conversation on Monday about, you know, sort of how to leverage the heritage and history of this town. Well, you know, you're not leveraging the history and the heritage of this town if you're knocking down buildings at the same time. And so, to me, it felt a little bit like, hey, you know, you got $1 million home, but you're not going to insure it, right? It may not be around. And so, you know, to me, like, the insurance for this economic development, you know, is preserving homes, is having some sort of way to do that. Anyway, that's how I perceive it. And if I can go ahead, or we can, if you want to throw in a question, we can talk as we go. My view is that, you know, we can't just build awareness around the value of history in Orleans. Like, you know, images are great of old buildings, and stories are fine about, you know, what transpired here in World War II, but it's really got to be in the service of preservation. I mean, that's where I think we have to stack hands. It's like, what is our objective? And to me, it's finding ways to preserve homes and buildings. And so it's, you know, a historic district is great because it gets you there, but so is a demolition bylaw. It gets you there too. And, you know, in some of my conversations and fact-finding, you know, I learned that I think there's ways for communities or blocks to create, you know, their own historic status. So I think we have to think about it as a broader, you know, it doesn't really matter, to me at least, how we get there, it's just that we get there. So I'll just go to the next. I think part of the problem, you know, that or maybe part of the opportunity, is that we've got to, you know, stack hands on messaging as well. What are we arguing? And, you know, intuitively I say, yeah, it makes sense to preserve buildings. Not everybody thinks that. I am struck by the, you know, the small amount of research I did, that how valuable historic preservation is to the local economy. And you wouldn't know it from the conversation we just had, but it is, there is a lot of empirical data that shows the value of historic character, of historic districts, and to me, if that's the, you know, if that's the currency of this town, well, let's use it. So I think that you know, we have to get on top of that. I think the threat is huge. I'm kind of appalled that we don't know what we've lost. Like, what, you know, in the last 50 years, how many homes and buildings are gone? And what were they? And you know, you've got people who come to this town, they have no sense of the past. It's like they don't know what was there previously. And so I feel like if we're talking about, you know, historic preservation as, you know, a serious threat, we have to be able to demonstrate, listen, you know, X amount of, we've lost X amount of, just like you lose conservation land, right? Or your water is polluted. I feel like, you know, the town, obviously, you know, these historic homes are beneficiaries or custodians of them. I think we can agree on that. And then, you know, we need to cultivate constituencies. We've talked about, you know, the CHO. Like, do we have a, you know, do we have a dual purpose here? The homeowners, the select members. You know, who's our constituency? Who will march alongside us? I mean, is it you know, the conservation people? Because really, we're doing very similar. We have very similar goals. And then, finally, I think, and this may be where, we get some help, how do you get there? We know, demolition delays, and it's kind of a punitive option. Block by block is kind of more organic. His local or a national district, great thing, it hasn't been achieved. So anyway, I think, to me, that's sort of how you would, sort of up a kind of a game plan for moving ahead. And then if you go to the next, I think you have to be able to, articulate this in an elevator or, in a walk in the hallway. So, are we speaking the same language? It's good for the economy. We don't have any meaningful tools. We have a rich and important history. And contrary to public perception and the fact that there's all this burden on homeowners, it actually, you can see the value of homes rise, the tax base rise, it's beneficial for tourism. So, when we're talking in, casually, to our neighbors or, in town spaces, we're conveying a concise message or set of messages, and that people hear that and they start to, because right now, the message is it's a burden to homeowners, right? And that's, to me, that's, we might be able to do our job better in the direction that you're leading us. I think that we can, but that's false, and it's also false, that these ideas that they're going to tell you what kind of windows to put in and, what color to paint your house, and, they're going to take over, your lives. And so anyway, so finally, I just go to, how do we do this tactically? And it's probably, this is, beyond what just a board can do. But I think you gotta identify and get people on board. You gotta get some alliances. I think earned media is a good way, either through radio or news, with op-eds and features. I think Instagram's huge, and I think we have to think about one of the real issues with Instagram is creating content. And what I did notice on the town site, and I don't see anything on the historic district or the cultural district site, is fresh content. Like we get pictures of like the old, of the Whole Foods store, but as it existed, 100 years ago, right? But I think we need fresh content. And, I'm wondering, like, I think we ought to explore, is that an internship, an unpaid internship for a high school senior who wants to go into marketing and communications in college and, spend the summer. We need to get some of our historic properties up on social media, talking about, what they are and their value. And I'm not saying we need to jump right into, hey, historic preservation first. But we got to get some of those. We got to get some more recent, and certainly on the cultural district. I mean, there is no sign of history on that Instagram, and I would be happy, frankly, to curate or to write copy, or to edit or whatever, if we can get somebody to do.
I'd be happy to try to find some content to go on there. I think. Bill, there's a rich mine of things that show for what a street looked like 100 years ago, or things that, because I think that the theme of what we've lost is a good one. You can put side by side. This is what the garage is.
You walk down the alleyway into the post office, and the number of people who stop and look at those photographs is amazing, and they recognize. Somebody the other day said to me, "Where was that?" And you can sort of walk them through where it was. But to his point, the town doesn't look like that anymore. Right.
So I do have to say, just in terms of the town's social media presence, I do try to do a historic post at least once a month. And they are one of the most engaging posts. People love to see those images. I have been to the Cho, I've gone through all of their photos, I've gone through the Cummings collection at the library, and I have those on there, and I'm gonna use my words carefully. There's some real gems in there, but there's not a ton of content that I think I'd love to be able to sit and kind of brainstorm about that type of stuff too, and see how we could be a little bit more creative. And like you mentioned the Whole Foods, like I did it through the years,
Right.
Which was fun to,
Yeah.
People, because we had a photo of it in the early 1900s, mid 1900s, and then now. And then I have a plan for Rock Harbor because we're doing the ribbon cutting soon, and just kind of like chronicle the history of that. And then I, of course, just celebrated our birthday, and wouldn't shut up about the birthday in our office. I was like, did you know? We're 229 today. But, and that was, again, one of the most engaged. People really do. So you're right, there is a emotional connection. The theater photo was something people were like, I saw E.T. That, they will comment, they will share their memories. People do connect to it. So making that going from there to then taking action, that's where, I do have to kind of figure out what's the town's role in that, and what our voice can be really, but I don't think it's, I think that it's there, it's right
Yeah,
there,
and it's
so.
a good point. Go ahead,
Just
Bill.
a little history and disappointment on the part of town officials. And it is when we asked for $10,000 at town meeting, and it was the last loud voice. But prior to that, on that agenda, members of the select board stood up as private citizens and supported the purchase of property on Tonsett Road. Not one person from town hall stood up in support of the $10,000. And that was a disappointment to me, and I think to our commission. And from that point forward, we essentially withdrew the bylaw from consideration, because we felt as though, even though we made a presentation, that it wasn't going to go anyplace. And until such time as we figure out, as you just said, what is the role of public office in support of this?
Well, and I'm talking about municipal, there's a
Yeah.
difference between public office
No,
and
so-
publicly elected officials
Yeah, but-
and town hall.
Correct.
So it's like, that's a little bit,
I understand.
and what we could, but I'm happy to explore that conversation and see where we just think I have to be careful about telling people.
Oh, no,
one way or
I
the other.
understand.
But I think there's creative ways to definitely frame all of this for sure.
So I really want to affirm what Bill said. I know that what he said reflected the point of view of several of the people that were on the commission last year who left the commission. And at least a couple of us that are on the commission this year. That disappointment and what took place there, was deeply disappointing to the commission, because a ton of work had been put in. If you look at the work Joan Nix did and what she put in, that is a masterful piece of document. What was said at the meeting in terms of what it said would take place was wrong. It just simply was misstated. I did notice when I went to the last town meeting that there were a number of things that were controversial, and many of the people on the select board, if not all of them, got up and spoke positively about the stuff that they supported. Like Bill said, in this case, nothing was said. Now, and the $10,000 wasn't to create a historical district. It was to finish a study. And I think there's people are not on this commission now, as well as some people in here. There's deep dissatisfaction with what has taken place in the past. And if I didn't articulate that, I wouldn't be truthful. So I don't think there's an answer to what Bill said and what I said. I think it's just simply a statement.
Yeah, could I ask, I mean, it's all well and good to, you know, have the tears that occurred after that meeting, but, you know, I think the presentation is here is looking forward. You know, I think it's how do we build?
Yeah, no, I
Of the
don't want to
historic
litigate the
heritage.
past, but I just, Amanda wasn't here at that time.
Oh, I was.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
Okay. So
I was new, it was my first town meeting ever in my life, so it was,
Yeah, and I think,
yeah.
I take your point, Kevin, and so our idea going forward was that we needed to take some steps back, because clearly if you couldn't get a majority vote for $10,000, there wasn't much hope of getting, you know, anything else through. So we think that this campaign of public awareness is critical to building toward a consensus in the town that history preservation is going to require more than what we're doing now. But I think that's a process that we're gonna have to get more people to see it. And I think, you know, Thaddeus makes some really good points. I really like the idea of emphasizing how important history is to what happens in Orleans now, what the economic development and the cultural heritage
Yes.
are, you know, are all directly related to that history. So
Absolutely.
I think
Yeah.
that this is a really good effort. We have a CPC grant, which is in danger of not being spent in time. We have to spend, we have $15,000 to spend.
15 less couple.
Last couple, in fiscal, are we still in 26?
In this year.
Yes. In this fiscal year. So we can apply that to whatever in here we think, I think the language is.
But I want to make a couple notes. Public awareness is good. To me, the issues are more significant than that. The issues are that historical preservation is viewed, I think, by a lot of people as not being in alignment with affordable housing, as not being in alignment with economic development, and as being burdensome. So I don't know if any of that has to do with public awareness, but I think those are the issues, and when you take a look at what was said at the meeting took place, they tended to go in terms of what I just said as being the issue. And I think if we think public awareness by itself is going to create something different, I could be wrong, but I don't think by itself it's going to do that. I think we have to address what are the significant issues that are taking place, and the three I just mentioned are what I think personally are the issues that are stopping, that are creating roadblocks in town. Just my point of view.
Let me ask a question. You know, obviously the board, you know, can do so much, but you know, when I look at successful efforts in Orleans, I look at the Orleans Pond Coalition, you know, which started in the 90s and has really achieved a significant measure of success. But it's, you know, separate and apart from government, public advocacy. Does historic preservation need something, some vehicle outside of this group that can help drive the conversation? Because I totally agree with Charles. I mean, there's plenty of strong arguments about how historic preservation can work with and enhance affordable housing, you know. And obviously the economic arguments are very strong. You know, there's just it's a good story to tell, but how do you get, and you know, frankly, you know, in the 1990s people really weren't that concerned about clean water. You know, it wasn't, you know, there were a handful of people who were, but there wasn't a ton. So how do you?
I'm not sure as a commission we ever actually addressed those specific issues. In fact, I don't think we did. We address issues about why historical preservation made sense, but I don't think we ever addressed the issues that I'm aware of, that we specifically address the issues of how it fit with affordable housing, how it fit with economic development, we did deal with the issue of it being burdensome, but I don't think we dealt with those other issues. I don't think we went in front of it.
Economic development, we put forth a slider to, the few public meetings we had prior to the pandemic, that was highlighted as.
But it wasn't, we didn't,
We didn't
did we go
well
to,
into
did we
it,
go
no.
to the various town committees?
No,
who
we
had-
never
who-
got there.
Who voted on, and raised point of views about
Right.
that issue, about why it would help economic development, not hurt economic development? Why it could fit with affordable housing versus not, I don't, listen, I've been there and I'll take my share of blame. I don't think we did any of that stuff.
And I would just add, Mr. Chair, if you use another, I mean, you're, by virtue of your bylaw and, you know, you're a regulatory body that also has an educational component in terms of preservation. That's an active word that brings up emotions and it's a good thing. And, you know, as Charles was saying, you know, you've done the regulatory side. You've done none of the emotion, tell the story, like, did you know a sea captain was in this house and he raised a family of these people that are still part of the community? Tell that story. But, you know, you look at CONSCOM. Conservation Commission is a regulatory body, but I think over the years, because I've been around long enough to see where CONSCOM was a hated entity, because all they were refusing requests, they've now turned to, I think, a more helpful body regulatory-wise. Like, gee, did you know if you put in a soft solution, we could save you money? And no, I didn't know that. So they still keep their regulatory, you know, credentials, but they also manage 16 public parks and recreation areas. So you didn't even have to do the outreach. They've got a sign that says, when you go to Putnam Farm, this is CONSCOM. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
You have none of that.
Yeah.
So I think what you've raised, that is really an opportunity to connect your outreach with what you really do beyond your regulatory thing.
Yeah.
And it's an ongoing thing, but I think now we have staff support, both in terms of communication from Amanda, Mike, that can help you keep track of a lot of things going on with other committees. And also, Bill, to your point about the next meeting, where you are talking about demolition and all the things you do, having the building inspector, at least invite, whether or not they can make it or not, but architecture review, believe it or not, because I was their liaison for a number of years, takes what is inherent values that you look after into play with all their approvals. That's why at least the Chase Bank didn't look anywhere near as ugly as what the first plan was. Because they influenced a little bit of the facade to say, gee, could you make it? You know, so they were a partner with you.
That's a
Do
scary
homeowners
comment.
I
go-
know, but
go through architectural
just,
review?
I'm just laughing. I'm just
back down to
laughing.
South Carolina off of exit, you know,
Yeah,
9.
right.
Well, you know what, I grew up, I tell people, I grew up in the Delaware, Maryland shore, and I go down from time to time. I went down the shore. You know, my family had houses down in Fenwick Island, little cottages. The whole place now is nothing but skyscraper. I mean, it's horrendous.
Yeah.
Now, by the way, if you really want to get a picture of showing people in this town what it looked like,
There you
we
go.
should go down there and take pictures of the Delaware, Maryland shore and juxtapose them here. I mean, actually, I'm pretty serious about that. Because it's bad looking.
I mean, we even heard it earlier, you know, fear and negativism rises up the adrenaline, so, you know, but you're on a really good path, and I'm glad, you know, we can certainly as a town support you. Amanda's raised, you know, there are some, you know, some guardrails we
I
have
just have to
to.
get clear on
Yeah.
that, you know, but then, and I'm happy to reserve a slot, you
Yeah.
know, for it. And also in terms of the cultural comprehensive plan, you know, working, continuing to have you guys involved in that and having it,
That's
I
super
think
important.
that's gonna get us much more clear on that kind of, public, not just outreach, but marketing piece, you know, I think we'll be able to, you know, I talked about a collateral piece for the town and there being that historic walking tour, what, you know, however we determine we wanna incorporate that, but that's my grand plan is to, because that collateral piece will reflect all of the things that feed into economic development here, and that is history, that is the arts and culture, and, you know, all that. So, it's definitely, you know, on my mind because I do see the value.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I could just picture the walking tour. I mean, you can say people, you know, did you ever come to the Howard Johnsons? Well,
Right.
let's start at the Lost
Yeah.
Dog Pub
Yeah.
and go to the Cable Museum. I mean,
Right.
talk about
Yeah.
rich history
Yeah.
there where we communicated
Yeah.
to Brest,
Yeah.
France, and then you can come down
Yeah.
the hill and, you know, you've got a handful of walking tours that people could
Yeah.
connect and say,
We
wow.
talked about reviving
Yeah.
those, you know, and trying to get, but to your point, looping in other organizations that,
Mhm.
because this,
Yeah,
you know.
there's a manpower question
Yes.
at some
Yes.
point. And also, you know, you do want people speaking the same language or sharing the same goals.
Yeah.
And you know, and that's maybe just, you know, meeting and talking and,
And that, I think with the cultural comprehensive plan, that's where we're trying to get everyone sort of
right,
at the table together. You know, and we talked about having all of the cultural and heritage organization, or, you know, at least the town multi-member bodies, around the table at least once a quarter or something, so you can all kind of touch base about what you're doing. I think there's more of that connectivity will.
So I'll bring up Ed's point again. There's about 14,500 left in money for public education. Runs out the end of June. We've had this dialogue about what to do for a while. Clock's running out. I'm just saying, clock's running.
So, Mr. Chair, I mean, if you encumber that money,
Yes.
that's a nice term that basically prevents them from taking
taking
it
it
away
back.
from you.
So I would think, and I don't know because of how this may be a gap issue, you know, gap general, general accounting principles, but I wonder if we couldn't pay for a couple of summer interns, if we could encumber that money by
Mhm.
June to pay for summer interns in June, July, and August maybe?
And you could also put out a very quick request for proposals, not a big procurement, but invite Mr. Scully as a potential proposer to give some example case studies of what work he's done on outreach and marry them.
Yeah.
yeah,
And-
yeah. Is that, I mean, would that all be under that one umbrella of $15,000?
Could we, yeah, well, that's what we have at
Yeah.
the moment.
It's for public education, that's how it's
Yeah.
defined.
For short dollars, I mean,
Yeah,
this rate, you know?
yeah, it's right, we can do a few things.
A few
Yeah.
hours out of them and.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kevin and
Yeah.
Amanda,
So
what do
Maybe
you
you and I,
think we
Thaddeus,
should?
can work on that.
yeah.
Yeah. What do you think we should do, the commission should do with the report that was submitted regarding the East Orleans Historic District? In other words, to Charles's point, the amount of work that
Mhm.
both Joan and the commission as a whole put into this is sitting, and it's filled with extraordinary information. And I don't know how, you know, it should be put to some positive use.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be filed with the town
Mhm.
and archived.
Mhm.
I don't
I don't know
know if that was ever done.
Do you know if it's on the
I
town
thought it-
website at all?
I don't know, I think it is, and I think, I believe it was also submitted to Mass Historical Commission.
Okay.
So, but we could check on both of those. I'm pretty sure that we put the full report of the study committee on the
But
website.
it, but to
On the town
Thaddeus'
website or the
efforts
historical?
here, I think
Historical
there's so
Commission
much
website, you know,
Yeah, right.
rich
Should it be on the
information
town website?
embedded in this report.
Because that's where it was
Yeah,
supposed to
yeah.
go, on
I
the
would
town
love to,
website.
I'm not familiar
I'll
with that.
send
No,
it to
what,
you.
if I can add, I mean, what you're pointing out, Bill, actually is, by following, whether it was a bylaw, there was a special track that I remember, we had to appoint them as a special
Correct.
body.
Yes,
And we've never closed that out properly. That's really what you're raising,
Yeah.
and I'll look into it,
all right,
yeah.
thank you.
You know,
and
it happened at the same time that Joan and Ron left, and whether or not it actually got
Right.
submitted, because you're right, that was, and it was supposed to go to the Mass Historical
Right,
Commission,
right.
and then there was more or less, I think, an unlimited period of time.
Right.
Maybe I'm wrong about that, but of which it could be brought up to the town vote. I don't think anybody's prepared to bring it up to a town vote at this time, but God forbid, this commission does this at some point in time, they should not have to reproduce that work.
And
That was February 24th, 2025, is when that report was made to the select board.
And also, honest to God, and I don't say this disparaging, don't feel you're special. The reports and studies all get done, and no one knows where they went. I mean, we spent close to $500,000 on dredge studies that have gone nowhere. So again, like I said, we tend to have the ability to not have tickler files to say, where did this go? So thank you for raising that, and we will definitely jump on it.
Well, Kevin, I think it was our responsibility to send it to somebody in the town. I don't know if that ever happened, or I don't know if either we dropped the ball or the town dropped the ball.
No worries, we'll track it down.
So I just want to make sure we've got next steps. Thaddeus, are you comfortable with what we need to do next to move this along?
Well, I mean, I think we do have to, informally or formally have some agreement on sort of, what our, kind of broadly what the strategy and messages are, and that would be, that we're working towards the goal of preserving more buildings and homes, and then how we're going to talk about it. I do feel like, it seems like the economic driver kind of conversation. I could see doing that, in a town Instagram. Did you know that historic district or historic property or whatever, generates X amount of dollars? I don't think that's terribly in your face. Some awareness around that. I think I do feel like it would be nice to do some research and know what we've lost, because I feel like we need a sense of urgency. I don't know how we use that, but I just feel like that's.
I think if you talk to Ron Peterson, you can get the vast majority of what was lost.
Yeah, and then I do feel like at some point we really have to talk about what to counter sort of public opinion that's not correct.
Yeah. So why don't you and I work on the proposal, and maybe we can pull some of that together as part of what we're asking someone to do, or if not, we can off to the side.
Yeah.
Make sure we have a strategy statement. It's always good to have your elevator pitch. We don't have a lot of elevators in Orleans, but
Yeah.
you have your elevator pitch to to get that 30 seconds. What exactly we're trying to do with this. So I think that's probably what we want to do.
There's also some low-hanging fruit, I think. I know we've talked about the Historical Society kind of ovals on homes. There's one on our house as the parsonage. They're really, they're visible. They confer a certain, status. And if there's a way to get homeowners, to say, hey, listen, for $50, you can get one of these, the such and such home, 1835. And sort of build that constituency, give people a sense of ownership that they're part of something larger than their own property.
Sounds like a podcast.
Bill, I think to do that, you would have to get that requested through Joe, because I don't believe we can use CPC money, which may pay for it. I don't believe we can use CPC money for private properties. But Joe, based on their legal status, could request that.
It could, or you could just simply, be able to, they would, obviously, if they were a historical society, you'd have to go through Joe, you could do it, so just this, this is where you go to order.
I think it's not easier if it's given away for free.
Thing, and let them do it.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you for that, Thaddeus, and again, Amanda and Kevin, thanks for being here, participating in this. Appreciate it. If there isn't anything else, I think.
Yeah, I do have one other thing. I think we need to put on the next agenda secession plans for the commission.
Okay.
I think there are a number, I know that I'm termed out after this unless select board put me back on again, because I've been on 2 terms.
You are a regulatory body. If I were to follow our multi-member body appointment policy, regulatory boards, and we went over this last meeting.
Yeah,
That's why this guy is still here. You can serve 3 full terms if you care to.
Okay.
But
That's fine, I'll do that. I didn't think it was, I didn't have the distinction between a regulatory body and
Yeah,
a non-regulatory
It's
body.
there, it's there.
I
So
think,
is there need to have a reapplication, or does it take place?
You'd need to still let Molly know you're interested in
fine.
continuing to serve.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
Send her. a quick
so
note.
do we want to go ahead and talk about that next week?
Well, I
Or
still
next
think,
month?
because you said at one time, Ed, you probably wouldn't be here next year. I don't know if that's still true.
We fixed that.
You may have fixed it. So it may not be an issue.
Yeah.
It would have been an issue if he and I both left at the same time.
I think I wouldn't mind having the conversation because I haven't committed, but we have to talk about CPC and that's an extra burden on you, Charles. And so I think we should go ahead and have the conversation. We should talk about who's up when, so everybody knows when they're coming off. And I think it would also be a good time to say, how can we do some recruitment? Because it would be nice to have the two other alternate members that we could have on this commission so that we would feel a little more comfortable about, having some room in terms of quorums, but also people who would be coming along and following in our footsteps.
Mhm.
So,
I think it'd be great if we had an architect, but I'm just wondering if there's anybody on architectural review. Is that a board or a town? What?
That's another regulatory board,
It's a regulatory board?
Yeah.
So it's volunteer role?
just like you. They
So-
step up and,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I just wonder if we might be able to poach somebody from
Yeah, from the-
architectural review
Yeah, there might
to
be
help
somebody who's
us.
turned
We
out
did-
in
we-
architectural review.
For whatever it's worth, Joan and Ron had multiple meetings with the Architectural Review Board.
Yep.
As they went through this whole process. What they did not have is meetings with I don't believe, with the Finance Committee or the Planning Committee. And I don't believe that took place, which was interesting, because there were 2 votes against the 10,000, which probably would have been good to short circuit that before it took place. But there are many meetings with that commission, because it interacted with the
You do.
proposed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, if one of them has the bandwidth, I know they have 2 new members, one recently appointed, who's really excellent, Andrew Mio, a longstanding architect from MIT, I believe. And we have a new appointment coming up on next Wednesday, Rich Morangel, who is a wonderful architect.
Okay.
And among the group, other than this young guy, he's young too.
Yeah.
Kevin, I do have one question that I don't think there's time today to deal with, but I think it would be worth a dialogue with you about what we should do to get select board active support for historical preservation, including maybe someday a historical district, maybe not a district. I can tell you that Ron felt strongly, and Joan felt strongly, that there was not strong support in that type of stuff. I never sat in one of the meetings, so I can't say whether that's true or not true, but I think figuring out a game plan to get the select board as active proponents of historical preservation would be something that is absolutely required to eventually, for any public education, any future direction. And I think almost like clearing out some of the, you heard what Bill said, you heard what I said. I mean, this has all been under and I can tell you Ron and Joan felt the same way. This has been somewhat under the surface and something above the surface. And my intention, something like that, is to address it, pull the Band-Aid off, and figure out how to deal with it, if it should be dealt with.
We'll have a new select board member here shortly, who I think is favorably disposed, lives in an early family home, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we will have a better reception. Not that we didn't, I think we were handmaiden to other agendas.
Exactly. I always thought it wasn't a question of support as it was a priority. There's so much else going on.
Yeah, but it's
especially with
$10,000. I mean, come on.
I
We
know.
blow through
I
so much
agree.
money, it's
Yeah, I know.
unbelievable.
And, just listen to what you said, though. I mean, if you pick the 700 people that were there, it's just $10,000, why can't they get the study done with what they've already got? I'm just saying.
Well, and the answer was very clear, maybe, and maybe it should be articulated, there is no more money left over. There is no money.
That wasn't being clear.
Well, I'm not taking blame, I'm
But
not
it was
taking.
it was the last loud voice.
You're absolutely right. They sit and wait in the wings.
Oh,
There
they'll
were,
be there.
there were a lot of things.
They're not
I
dying
listened to.
anytime soon.
And there were a number of things said that were not truthful.
Any other new business? Anybody have any, all right.
Well, wait, let me, is it our intention to, and I would advocate this, I'll say it right now, that we propose, can't be for spring, but for fall, or it could be next spring, a new demolition delay bylaw.
I think that's still to be determined. I think we should be working on one, and I think we should seek advice and counsel from the select board and from others as to whether or not that would be a prudent thing to do. There's not a lot of downside to it because we're gonna be stuck with the other one if we don't change it, but it does put one more case of historic preservation to the vote, and if the vote isn't favorable, then I think it creates a momentum in the wrong direction.
Well, the
But I
work-
think it's to be decided.
Well, then I would suggest we put it up for a conversation
Yeah.
next meeting, because we did do the work, and we did come up with a proposal, and it basically changed like 2 words in here, a couple things. It changed time frame and one other thing, I forget what it was, because people wanted to make a potential, the commission wanted to make a potential vote easy for the town, so it wasn't a whole new rewritten everything, it was just, here's the only changes take place. So I would suggest that we make this an agenda item for next time.
Let's do it, because, we started the conversation here. I think we know what we want to do. I think the two things are the length of the delay and the definition. We need to clean up the definition.
No, there's one other thing,
Is
I
there
forget
another-
it, but there's.
Okay,
one
whatever
other
they
issue.
are, if you have something you want to put on the table,
Mike,
Charles,
I
or
sent it,
anybody
I
else.
sent it. Mike has it,
Oh,
I sent
okay,
it to him.
so then we should, because I think we don't want this to go on for a conversation forever. We want to come up and say, let's have some specific ideas, and then when we have a bylaw that we think is better than the one that we have, then we can make a decision about whether we move it or not move it, depending on,
And from timing, if you want to, we are planning a fall town meeting. We do have, I think, 7 or 8 items already planned for that. So, if you think a revision's in order, there's.
Is it strategically better to do a fall or spring? My,
I'm beyond that worry about which meeting. If the work needs to be voted on and done, bring it. There are those that'll stand up and say, wrong time to bring this, you should bring it in May. I'm sorry. If you're ready to bring it, go through your public hearing process, make the edits, recommendations, and,
I'd love to hear what Chris or Skelly or somebody like him what his guidance would be on that.
well, we have from the commission, they proposed what they model. We have that.
yeah, that's.
You've got that, Mike, you've got all that stuff. I sent you the model, I sent you draft 1, draft 2.
The model is in this packet, actually.
Yeah, and then draft 1, draft 2, and it can be changed. We're not obligated to do what the last commission looked at, but nonetheless, I think much of the work's been done.
The risk is it's punitive, and I think we, and it may absolutely be the right look. However way we get there is fine.
Yeah, well, I think
don't
we
really
wanna
care.
s-
I'm agnostic.
We
but,
want to sell it as it's clarifying the
There we go.
definition, so there's no more confusion.
Oh, the
That's
other-
a positive.
Okay,
The
well,
other
that is-
change-
that is a
The other
positive.
change was 18 months versus 12.
Yeah, that's what I said, the length of the demolition delay.
Yeah.
No, but the other thing was properties, and at that point in time, people talked about 1950. I mean, I think those are the only 2 changes that were done.
Yeah, so we want to go 75 years and not a specific date probably, right? Although we need to talk,
I think
I don't
it
even know
should
if we
be
want to
years.
do that much. I think it should be, shouldn't be a specific date. Question is whether it should just be a specific set of criteria, but we can have that conversation in the
I
next.
think the criteria for me is the most
Yeah,
crucial.
so look at it's all in the packet at the end of that Form B statistics report. I put in what Ron has been using, the specific criteria for deciding, so that's in there. So all that stuff should be consideration for what we're doing. I think the other thing we want to do next time is for the agenda, Mike, is we wanna, I would like us to move forward on this list. So that means everybody should get familiar with what those 595 properties are. And I will ask Eric to produce something that said what he used for criteria, if it's different than what, this
Well,
other thing.
actually, I'd like something slightly different. I'd like to know all the properties he excluded.
Yeah, I'll get that too. I have that on my notes.
Kevin, if we do come up with a different demolition law, what would you suggest would be appropriate for us to make a presentation to the select board ahead of time?
Please.
So that we get support ahead of time?
That would be great.
And what, should we do that also for the planning committee?
On the demolition bylaw?
Well, I just remember when, I forget which one, there was a vote of 5-2 against it. I'd like to stop that from happening.
Yeah, but this isn't money, so I don't think finance is gonna vote on it.
Yeah, it is.
It never hurts to do the outreach. Whether they take you up on it, that's a different thing. But, you know, the other logic and, you know, bounce things off Mike from a public process. You do your red line, post it as a public hearing, you'll get no comments. Or maybe, I think we'll get one comment. I think Ben will be here. But then you could say, this is what
Oh, we'll get another one,
You might, but
from a locksmith.
right, but then, I mean, I'm just betwixt or between whether you let the public hearing process go, hear your comments, and then proceed to want to go ahead and bring it to the select board, or do you do the other way around, using us as kind of the early sounding board. So, you know, pick it either way, but.
Okay, that's a conversation here.
Yeah. I mean, I always report out at liaison reports, the meetings I attend, or keep in
Yeah.
touch with chairs if I can attend. So I'll let them know what, you know, you're just bubbling on, nothing voted or anything, but at least to start
Yeah.
no surprises to anyone. That's what I try to live by, so.
Good enough.
All right, would someone like to make a motion to?
So moved.
If we could, just quickly,
sorry.
the next meeting on here, the date is incorrect, it's April 8th, not April 11th.
April
April
8th, okay.
Hold on a second, let me just
Note
look
that,
at something.
April 8th.
I've got a lot of appointments, so let me just see.
It's always the second Wednesday, right?
I understand, but I've got medical appointments.
Oh, okay.
Let me just look. I'm free.
All right, I have it on a day. Okay, second for the motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? All right, we adjourn.